I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hornady Podcast. I've got a couple guests with me. For those listening, on my left, I have the Assistant Director of Engineering, Joe Thielen, and on my right, the Director of Marketing, Neil Davies. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on with me today.
Yeah, good to be here, buddy.
Seth. Yeah.
Appreciate it. So I want to take this opportunity to talk about something that a lot of us aspire to. A lot of hunters, I think, grow up reading about this, seeing it on TV, and it's really kind of a culmination of a hunting experience, and that is a safari in Africa. I think I know from growing up and with all the magazines that showed up that my dad had that I would read through, that was something that I always thought was unobtainable, and that's really not the case anymore, and it's getting, I think, easier to find a good outfitting service and make the trip over there. And you guys have both been a couple of times, so I'd like to just kind of walk through, because I've never been. I want to walk through what it's like. What do you got to do? What are some of the hurdles? What are some of the maybe the small things that people don't realize or don't appreciate quite as much as they should as they're starting to plan their trip and once they actually get there. So, first question, you decide, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to go to Africa. How do you guys, how have you picked an outfitter? What kind of process, what kind of research do you go through?
So I've been hunting in Africa on numerous occasions. I've been to a few different countries over there. Most of the time it's going to be something that we're doing as part of an industry deal. So first, I've been very blessed in that regard, because just like you, I grew up, I'm an enthusiast. I've been hunting since I was able to go hunting, quite frankly. And, I think that the call to go to Africa is pretty strong in a lot of people that like to hunt. Oddly enough, there's a lot of people that it's like a secondary pursuit. I'd say that so many people want to go elk hunting first.
Oh, sure.
And maybe I'm not answering your question, but like the one thing for folks to consider is that a trip to Africa where you could shoot, Southern Africa, where you could shoot, 5 to 7 plains game, animals, airfare, tips, everything, get home, is going to cost you about the same as a pretty darn good elk hunt.
A guided elk hunt.
Yeah. So, from that perspective, there's a lot more hunting that takes place. It's a long trip. There's no doubt about that. But, it's something that I think a lot of people should take a look at instead of some of the other things, maybe, just because once you do it, you'll kick yourself for not doing it earlier in your hunting career.
Sure.
That's a thing. But to answer your question about how to find an outfitter, number one, I would say don't ever go on a major hunting trip like that, particularly an international trip, without a reference from somebody that you know or trust. Even if it's a hunting celebrity or something like that, or you read about it in a magazine, something like that, but have a recommendation. Most of the folks over in Southern Africa that do any of this kind of hunting are reputable folks. The ones that aren't don't last very long.
Sure.
And they have a small community there too, and they get rid of the riffraff just like in other industries and organizations. And but yeah, that's what I would say.
Start with some of the low-hanging fruit, the people you trust, the magazines, the TV shows that you trust that are using those venues.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, you just got back from a trip here.
Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
So how did you select that hunting service there, that outfitter?
So, yeah, I would say, backing up, I used to read about it at 12 and 13 years old, like Africa and this and that. I knew I wanted to go, particular Namibia. I read about it, and I just got back from there. But I would say, for me, I was very fortunate in exactly what Neil said. Find some people that have been there. And I'm very blessed and fortunate to be in this company and industry that I knew people, Neil, Jason, other people outside of our company that had went there multiple times. And you're like, okay, I want to go hunt plains game, Southern Africa. And it didn't take very long and talk to very many people to be like, okay, narrow it down. And then we get to go to the trade shows and stuff. And I actually got to go meet the outfitters that I went with prior to ever going. So not only do you get a reference, but you got to go meet the people that run the business over there. And I would second.
Yeah, and that's a great point that he made, because you can go to the Dallas Safari Club show. That's usually in the first part of January. Very accessible, easy to get to from around the country, from around the world, obviously, and then Safari Club International show. But that Dallas Safari Club show, that's the first one of the year. It's a great show.
It's not expensive to go to, and all
this. It's open to the public. Anybody
can go. Yeah,
it's
open to the public. It's the entry fee is not very much. Kids can come in. I think maybe kids are free, something like that. But yeah, it's a fantastic place to come and look at taxidermy, meet with outfitters, meet with manufacturers. We're there. A bunch of other companies from throughout the industry are there. And yeah, just like Joe said, not only can you chat with this person via email and maybe a phone call, but now you can go look them in the face and chat with them. And at the same time, you could even probably get a reference from, at that point in time, just say, who's hunted with you? Anybody from the industry? And then you could walk straight up to a manufacturer's booth and say, hey, I heard you guys did a press event with this outfitter. How was it? Would you recommend it? But the reason for that is obvious. For a lot of people, it could be their first trip out of the country. And, it makes people nervous, obviously. But I would tell you that, don't be afraid. It's totally safe. I mean, once you fly over there, you're going to fly typically, if you're going to hunt in Southern Africa, Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, something like that. And for most folks, I presume it's a trip to South Africa is a good place to start.
Agreed.
So you'll fly into Johannesburg. In Johannesburg, you will either overnight there, or your outfitter / PH will come and pick you up and drive you from there. And if you have to stay overnight, they have a great facility right there in the hotel, in the airport, or there's a few off-site locations that can house you overnight too. There's some paperwork that you have to do in advance for your rifles. You have to get some paperwork from the United States, essentially saying that this firearm is yours. You own it here in the United States. That way they can check to make sure that when you come back in the country, that's the same rifle you left with.
Okay.
Or at least that the paperwork says that, that's what you took out of the country and came back with. But yeah, you book your airline travel. You typically leave out of, some folks will leave out of New York, not very many, just because it's difficult to travel with firearms in the city of New York. But Dulles in D.C., and then Atlanta is probably the biggest hub, I guess, for people that are going to South Africa. And it's always interesting when you go to the airport for that South African flight, is you can kind of like pick the people. So there's so there's this group of people in camouflage that are most likely going hunting, and then there's a group of there's always a group of school kids that are going over there on some kind of a trip, and then there's typically like some folks that are doing some kind of mission work over there as well, and then you'll see your normal travelers, if you will, and then it's probably some expats in the mix, but it's like every time you take that trip, it's always the same group of people. And oddly enough, you'll run, with what we do for a living, I've run into people I know for that flight, that, oh, hey, you're going to Zimbabwe, and oh, I'm going here and there. So that's always kind of fun.
That's cool. So you pick an outfitter, you do your research, and so you make contact with them, and you decide to go with them. What are some communication tips that you could give our listeners to when you're speaking with the guide service that you've selected, about your expectations, about what they expect, about the animals and the quality and the shots and the shot distances and that kind of thing? Is that a super important part, or is it kind of served to you, or do you have an input on that? Or
yeah, so in my experience, if you've been hunting for any length of time and you're a hunter, that part will come. The part that I can say about communication that has worked well for me, and I would say Neil would echo this, these guys I cannot say enough good about the professional hunters, the PHs that I've been with in Africa. These guys are truly professionals, and they are fun to go hunting with. They're awesome. And if you're just honest with them and just tell them about you and what you'd like to do and this and that, they will bend over backwards to make your dream come true, to help you achieve a fun safari and a hunt and stuff like that. So yes, other than communicating like, hey, I'd love to hunt some different species and, name those out, whatever they may be, that is important. Definitely do that and be honest. But after that, make sure you can, you're familiar with your rifle and you can shoot it and all those. They do a lot of, their terrain over there is different than ours. It's not tree stand. It's not laying down most of the time. They do most all of their work off of sticks, whether it be 2 or 3 leg sticks. And a lot of it is standing because of their terrain and brush and vegetation that they have there. So I would just encourage people to be able to practice and shoot off sticks because it will help you, have success over there. And then after that, just be honest with the outfitter and the PH, and they will, as long as they know kind of what you'd like to do, they will bend over backwards to help you. I mean,
but they will laugh at you when you tell them that you want to. I need a 60-inch kudu and a 40-inch gimp's buck. So like, that's like showing up at a hunting camp. Well, I need a 180-inch whitetail and a 360-inch bull elk.
That's a really good point though to bring up though, because people have these expectations in their mind, and I did to start with, being naive.
Sure.
And like, I want to go over there and get these giant, and it's, I guess it doesn't have. You described it to me as, look, just go have fun and hunting, and you will shoot some great trophies, and you will shoot some representative, very nice animals, and that's just the way it works. And it's fun.
It's still hunting after all.
Absolutely.
It's not like
I mean, the story, the analogy I give is like, you're going to shoot. So if you go there in a group, because typically that's the way it goes, you might have some of your buds or whatever you do, and you go over there with your family. So in your group of people for that week, they're going to work very hard to get you a representative animal of every species. So let's just say that's something that I think everybody can understand, like a 130-inch whitetail of every species. So representative, very nice animal. But in that mix, you're probably going to get one that's like a 150, maybe a 160. But then somebody in the group is going to shoot some animal that's like a booner, let's say. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to get really nice one. That's typically how it goes. But just to echo what Joe said, the terrain is varied. So once you do this evaluation of where you're going to go, unfortunately, until you get there, it's really tough to picture the terrain. So it is varied. I've hunted in places over there where, look, if I parachuted into that place in the middle of the night and nobody told me where I was, I would think I was in eastern New Mexico or somewhere on the eastern slope of the Rockies. And then I've been in other places that are very typical kind of open savanna looking stuff. And then there's other places that are just real thick brush. I've also hunted in swamps over there. I mean, the brush will change too depending on the time of year. So you go buffalo hunting in the Zambezi Valley in May. There's a lot of leaves on the brush, on the jess. But then you go there later in the summer, and I mean, it's basically like almost wide open because there's no more leaves. So that terrain is unique. And even in that place where it's pretty flat, there's some places where there are some hills. But there are spots where you're shooting like it's spot and stalk. I mean, you see an animal, you do like you would on any kind of Western spot and stalk hunt. You get in position and you take your shot. And then there are so many other places where you're in a Land Cruiser, which we should probably talk about, and you're cruising around. You're either in the front seat or in the back, and every animal you go stalk has seen you. So it's two different types of environments. And then there's also tracking safaris. So typically with a buffalo hunt or an elephant hunt or something like that, it's a tracking safari. So you go to, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting long-winded here, but you go to like a water hole or something like that, you'll find tracks, and then you walk out those tracks. And those animals, by and large, don't see you until the moment of truth. So, yeah, you want to kind of have an idea of the countryside that you're going to. A lot of these folks do a very good job with their marketing, and they'll have videos and drone videos and things like that. And then the other thing for a lot of Americans, a lot of the farms in South Africa or Southern Africa, they're game ranches. They are fenced, but they are huge fences. So that's something to take into consideration. There are other places where they're hunting on like tracts of government land as well, or co-ops, things like that are kind of like ranches basically, and you can hunt all over the place, and those are mostly indigenous animals. And then the other thing for folks to consider is that certain parts of the region have got different kinds of animals. So, like if you go to a game ranch, because most of them have a big assortment of animals, if you will, and they're not necessarily indigenous to that area. So it's kind of like goldfish, right? So if you have a goldfish in a little tiny bowl, he's this big. If you have a goldfish in this bowl, it can get large. Well, it's just the terrain. Maybe it's the stuff that they get to eat, what have you, but they don't grow to their potential. So you want to shoot a big gemsbuck? Well, those things are they get big in the Kalahari region. Same with hartebeest. And then there's two separate kinds there's multiple kinds of springbuck, but there's the common springbuck, and then there's a Kalahari springbuck, which is a larger animal. So long story short, some of those regions have very specific animals.
Okay.
And so you have to kind of pick that. Like, what's your target animal?
Yeah.
What's your bucket list? And then kind of pick accordingly.
But yeah, pick, because I learned that on the fly. If you're going to Namibia, Kalahari-ish, look for gemsbuck, springbuck, because the big ones, they live there. That's where they live. And so if you want certain species you want to hunt, go to that area where they live. You're going to shoot Val Rebuck, go to Eastern Cape, in South Africa. So that's a lot of things. I think people are like, oh, I just want this and this and this. Well, you probably should process that first and think, okay, I'd like to hunt, dig a little deeper, find out what lives there naturally, and then use that information to help you pick where you want to go.
Got it. So that's all good information. And I think you were talking about traveling with a rifle, and that's something I just kind of gloss over. That in and of itself can be stressful. So as far as the travel goes, getting over there, what are some of anything special that you guys do, or that standard practice that isn't normal for within the states travel?
I would recommend everybody look at using one of the travel specialty companies that deal with this.
Absolutely.
So I've used a few of them, and typically I've for this situation I've used Gracie Travel for going over to Southern Africa. Travel with Guns is another one, and they will help you whether you're going to any country in Southern Africa, Central, North, wherever you're going throughout the world. These companies will help you with all that paperwork.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
That is money. That is the best money you will spend on your trip, is using a travel.
It's not, and it's
peanuts compared to the overall cost of your trip, and it's the best money you'll spend.
Okay, so they help orchestrate the tickets and where you're flying and landing, and
which
the
airlines will let you check all the way through, so that way you don't have to touch your gear, what paperwork you're going to need to have filled out when you get there.
But speaking of checking your gear, so I've done this a few times, and one rule of thumb I tell everybody is, I don't care where you're coming from or how you're doing it, but when you get to the Johannesburg airport, you need to go down to the baggage claim and look for your firearm. Whether it's supposed to be checked through or not, they can't help themselves. They're going to they don't always, but typically, even if it's supposed to be checked through, they all grab the darn thing and go through a process with it, and then you have to tell them, look, it's checked through, or you have to go clear it, or whatever the case is, even domestically. So, and that's another thing that can be a little annoying for us is every airport you go to, whether you're leaving the country or not, you have to check the firearm in through the airport, through the police and that, and then they write it in logbook, and then you get to another place and you have to do the same process again. It's very annoying and time consuming. So I guess, the one thing I tell everybody is that the juice is worth the squeeze. So you go through this rigmarole. Sometimes some of the things that happen in the airport can be annoying, but once you're out there hunting, it's all worth it.
It is.
It's all worth it.
One of the most important things, and obviously we're Hornady Manufacturing. We make bullets. We make ammunition. How do you guys pick a bullet? Is there a premier bullet of ours that you think is, if you're going for African Plains game, you should look at taking this bullet, or do you take multiple for different situations, or what are your guys' thoughts on that? Before you get there, maybe address kind of what animals you're after and what your cartridge selection may be, and more specifically, what bullets are you after and why?
Yeah, so for me, in my hunting experience in Africa, has been Plains game so far. but I think you can easily separate, let's call it dangerous game versus plains game. Because if you're going dangerous game, it gets pretty simple in a hurry.
Yeah, right.
Dangerous game, heavy bullet, pick your cartridge. When you're talking plains game, yes, I look at where I'm going and what I'm hunting, absolutely, because the shot like distance varies, absolutely. But a good, well-manufactured projectile, hunting projectile will work. But I think after being there a few times, my opinion is you have ELDX and GMX. And with those two projectiles, you can do pretty much everything that you need to do plains game-wise in southern Africa hunting. ELDXs work great if you have more open terrain where you may shoot something at 200 yards or you may shoot something at 400 yards, because there are places over there like on Springbuck where it is very hard to close the distance on some of those animals. If you're going to hunt in the brush country of Kalahari area where it's flat and very brushy and long shots 200 yards, you can't beat a GMX. You just can't, because the animal may be quartering, broadside face, whatever. And when the PH is like, okay, that's the trophy that we want, and he tells you, let's take him now, you better be ready to take him now.
Yeah, when he says shoot, you shoot. Shot angle, shoulder blade. So the GMX and now our new CX would be kind of a pinnacle type bullet for plains game at traditional distances.
I think so. I think that's one of the best.
For 80 some odd % of the countryside that you're going to be hunting in, it's the choice, right? So again, just like Joe said, as Americans, we're typically hunting, looking for this bench rest perfect, broadside shot. Well, when you're over there, if they see an animal that's worth shooting and they tell you to shoot and you got to fish it through a bunch of brush or whatever the case is, and there's a little tiny window, they want you to put that bullet in there. And so you want a bullet that's going to penetrate, just like Joe said, maybe from the rear of the ribs all the way up into the boiler room. And that bullet will do that. So a CX bullet, that's the bullet that you want, because it's going to give you 36 plus inches of penetration on average. Going to have high weight retention all the way up into those vitals. And those shots in those locations usually are not very far. So like on kind of that flat terrain, 100 yards is about it, because it's very thick and brushy. And they're going to keep those shots to that. But you might have a longer one. But then when you go to the Eastern Cape, which has got a lot of relief and big hills, and even up around, on the other side of Johannesburg, up in the Limpopo, and even parts, south of Botswana and South Africa, there can be a lot of hills, and you could have some long shots, just like you would if you were out west. Mm-hmm. So whatever your capabilities are, stay within that.
Sure.
But if you're in that kind of flat countryside, the CX bullet is an excellent choice. So there are some things to consider as well, though. So if you have a broadside shot, just make sure you're sure, as you should on every shot, but make double darn sure that there's nothing behind it, because on a broadside shot, depending on the size of the animal, you definitely could have an exit and then impact another animal.
Sure.
So be cautious about that. So in situations, like where you're hunting these big herd animals that kind of move around and they, cover each other up as they go, because you could have 50, 100 animals. So if you're going to be in those types of situations, then something a little bit more volatile that gives up a lot of weight, SST, ELDX is a great choice. But once you get into the dangerous game stuff or the larger animals,
different story.
DGX bonded, dangerous game solid, excellent choice for all that stuff. And you wouldn't be wrong to go over there with a DGX bonded for a plains game hunt. So, if you're going to do like a kind of a combo dangerous game, plains game deal where you're shooting Cape Buffalo maybe, and then you're going to shoot kudu and some other stuff, you sure can take a couple guns. It's fine. I mean, we make a lot of ammo, so you should take several guns.
Right.
But it's easier to travel with one.
Sure.
So I'm a big fan of 375 Ruger. I've had a lot of success with it, and there's not much over there. There's not much you can't do with it over in Africa. So yeah, if you were to use a dangerous game bonded on plains game, it's fine. Plus, so people will hunt eland, and I mean, kudu is a big animal. Kudu's elk-sized animal. The other thing for pretty much all those animals in Africa is they have large adrenal glands. So they might be dead because of that shot, but that adrenaline is going to keep them going for longer than most of our animals. Don't admire your shot. Learn to be a rifleman. So don't admire your shot. Take that second, third shot, whatever you need to do just to make sure that you anchor that animal. Because like I said, chances are you made a great shot on that first one, but let's make sure. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
it just reduces the emotional experience that you might have later on. And on dangerous game, it can get pretty hairy. I've shot one Cape buffalo in my life, and before I did, I watched all the Boddington on Buffalo videos. And if he's watching this, I'm sorry if I'm using his name in vain, but there's a scene in there where Randall Pence, that worked for Ruger, shoots a buffalo, and he had enough time, not a whole lot of time, but he had enough time to put another one in that buffalo, and they tracked that same buffalo, which is a testament to his PH, a friend of mine, Mark Villaro. They tracked that buffalo for 3 days and got up on it once or twice before, and then finally caught it on the third day.
Oh, wow.
And then they killed it. So that's a testament to Mark and his trackers, and Mark's a great hunter and very talented guy. Anyway, so if you can put that second shot in it, and usually in that situation, the first shot is going to be a soft, and then you follow it up with a solid, because that solid is going to drive. So those are things to consider. And the same on a plains game. Same in North America, quite frankly. It's the same deal. Let's not have this emotional experience where if you can help it.
Oh, sure. The turmoil of making what you think is a great shot and may or may not be a great shot, but then not recovering that animal, within a couple hours after you shoot it, whether you're archery hunting or rifle hunting or whatever it is. Here, just you're shooting the deer.
There's just a whole different level of circumstances that might unravel themselves in Africa if you wound certain animals.
Sure.
So with a leopard, let's say, all right. So the primary trophy on a leopard is its hide. So if that leopard stays out overnight wounded, or you can't find it, hyenas will tear that entire leopard up. That's what's going to happen. The hyena is that's what they do.
Yeah.
So you are morally, ethically, legally obligated to go look for that leopard. And most leopards are shot in the evening or, in the dark, whatever, depending on where you are in the local laws. So if you wound that sucker, it's now you are going. I mean, in some cases, the hunters don't. That's a you decision. But the PH is going to go, who's typically got a wife and children. The tracker or 2 or 3 are going to go. They too are typically married with children. So there's a lot of lives that are having to deal with the outcome of your shot.
Sure.
So, what Joe's saying, you do need to practice your shooting. You need to be proficient as best as you possibly can. And unfortunately, you won't know how well you shoot under pressure until you're there. Under certain circumstances, because again, shooting a plains game animal is one thing. Shooting a dangerous game animal, there's a certain adrenaline dump you may get from that.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I'm sure it's pretty intense. And then just like you were talking about, here when you shoot let's say a white-tailed deer in 20 acres of woods and you can't find it right away, that feeling is it's just horrible. Like you can't sleep at night. And there's no dangerous game there, but in that situation, not only do you feel that same negative emotional feeling, now you have other people's potentially lives at risk. Not just the animal, but your
just don't do the thing where you take the shot and then you drop the rifle and don't even. A lot of times they're just admiring their shot and taking a mental picture of what's going on. Stay in the gun.
Reload.
Yeah. If it fell down, stay on it. Watch what's going on. Make sure it expires. If it's running off and you have the chance to take another shot that's safe without a bunch of other animals in the way or something like that, by all means, put another bullet in it for, again, moral, ethical, legal, and your own emotions and those of the people around you. And then on a dangerous game situation, that's a thing. I mean, that is definitely a thing that I would say you need to actually probably train for is shooting, reloading, shooting again,
sure.
and again and again. Because,
Yep.
I mean, a Cape Buffalo has just got a huge volume of blood, and until that blood stops going to its brain, it could still hurt you.
Absolutely.
So you have to do things to stop that amount of blood going to its brain, or injure it such that it can't move, or whatever the case might be.
And talk to your PH. Every guy that I've been with over there is awesome. Their communication is so concise and good. They're going to help you. Like, hey, here's how this is probably going to go down. Or the shot's fired, reload. Okay, do you see him? He's on the left. Shoot him again. And so
they'll coach you through
they
it.
will help you. They're very good.
And if it's hairy, they'll take a shot at something too, obviously.
You.
I mean, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And they might talk to you about it first off, because there's some people that, after your first shot, do you want me to shoot? And I'm always like, yeah.
Yeah. I want to go home. I want you to go home.
I'm going to trust that the first shot I put in it was lethal, but, everything else after that, we'll just make sure that we have a good experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's like North American elk hunting. You always hear you're shooting them if they're standing. If they're that's why, another subject, but had a discussion with some folks not too long ago about shooting at running game. And, typically it's taboo, right? I mean, we don't do it. Well, okay, we don't do it for the first shot. That's pretty normal. But I think shooting at running game for after you've hit them with the first shot and then you shoot them with the second one to anchor them in this situation, that happens a lot. Sure. So maybe that's something to practice is, again, you never want to shoot at moving game on that first shot, but the follow-up shots, if that's the only opportunity you're given, the difference between them, out of your life forever or possibly getting somebody hurt depending on the situation, or you successfully filling that tag is shooting a moving animal. So maybe practice that, and obviously the range is going to dictate a ton.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's going to be fairly close, And yeah, and the PH, just like Joe said, so they're going to be watching everything that's happening. They're always in binos as you're taking your shot. They see if there's other animals around, and they will be giving you most of the time calm instructions about what to do. Reload, shoot again, reload. They're kind of coaching you through that process. And on dangerous game, in that situation, they don't have a scoped gun. It's usually just an iron-sighted rifle, and you're pretty close. I mean, buffalo are not shot much over 100 ever. Usually it's well within that.
Got it.
Yeah.
So as far as the hunting goes, you pick a good bullet, like you guys mentioned, a monolithic bullet like our CX bullet, just fantastic. Maybe an ELDX bullet or traditional lead core bullet, depending on what you're after. But the actual hunting, so you're there. What's the actual day-to-day hunting? Do you start, like you mentioned earlier, in a high rack vehicle, or for like a plains game, let's say? Neil, you'd mentioned earlier about the tracking type hunt from like a water source. But for plains game, what's that look like? You start your day. Are you out there on a hilltop glassing as the sun comes up, or what's that look like?
So for me, it's varied on the different places that I've been. So I've been where you get up in the morning and you head out in, and it's flat as this table, thick brush, and you're up on the truck in the back usually, so you get a little bit of elevation to see. And then if you spot an animal and get a good look at it, and that's one you want to pursue, dismount and off you go. And it may be a half mile, it may be 3 miles. You never know, because that animal's normally seen you and you got to use the wind and try to get it. And then I've also been where it's very open and you drive to a elevated area and you glass, and then you spot and stalk, and then make a play from there, whether you're going to drive around, down, whatever, or stalk from there.
Okay.
So I've had both, and all of which are very fun. I can't say that I enjoy one over the other, but typically it's get up in the morning, get in the Land Cruiser and either start hunting right away or drive to a location where you can spot and stalk, or,
Yeah, there's basically there's kind of 2 trucks over there, and they call them buckies usually. So, odd story, I was actually born in South Africa, so some of it's, it's an Afrikaans term. But yeah, bucky is the name for a truck. So there's a Toyota Hilux, and then there's the Toyota Land Cruiser that's used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Toyota Hilux.
The Toyota Land Cruiser is a vehicle that has conquered.
Those things are awesome.
Conquered Africa. So everybody that's ever been over there would love to be able to buy one. It's a pretty elementary vehicle. It doesn't have a lot of creature comforts in it. but they can just take a pounding and just keep going.
Yeah.
They're great vehicles, and they're more often than not, pretty much every time, they're modified with a big rack that goes in the back, and then you sit on a seat in the back. Depending on the time of year when you go over there, Africa can be cool or cold.
Yeah, that was kind of my next topic I wanted to dive into. Was you get your rifle, obviously your rifle, your optic, your ammunition. What's the auxiliary stuff that you're taking? You know, if I was going hunting out west here, I'd have binoculars and a spotting scope and a tripod and a bunch of other things, and I'd obviously know the temperature and layer and clothing-wise appropriately. For you guys, you taking a spotting scope? Obviously, I'm guessing you're taking binos. What kind of gear for clothing?
Binos. So, you know, like if you're hunting in the Zambezi Valley, 7s, 8-power binos would be the max. But in other places, you want 10s typically, or 12s or 15s, whatever. But more likely 10s, right? Because that's what they are. But yeah, small 7s, just lower power binos.
Okay, lower
in that
power,
kind of
bigger field of view.
Yeah, like if you're in the Zambezi Valley or someplace where it's tight, because you just don't need that. What you're looking for then is to see a tail flicker. You're looking 100, maybe 200 yards, and you're looking for a tail to flicker. You're looking
legs,
and you're trying to find the orientation of the animal for you.
Oh, okay.
So you're trying to figure out, is it facing me? Is it facing away, facing on? How's this? So you can obviously take that shot later. Another trick too is to sometimes you need to be looking that animal over in your scope. So
Sure.
Depending on the terrain, especially in that kind of flat country where most of those animals have seen you, so they're kind of on alert a lot of times. They'll give you an opportunity or two, but you want to be taking a look at it in that scope because it might happen like that, and you need to be able to take that shot. So don't get too fixated on running the binos in that kind of a scenario. Sometimes it's okay, but you need to be Johnny on the spot. You need to be quick, get up on the gun, look at it through your scope. But and in like Eastern Cape or some of these other places, yeah, having a spotting scope would be a really good tool, especially when you're looking for kudu and stuff like that.
Okay.
They can be very elusive. But so you'll fly over there and you'll get in a truck with these guys. And they're, kudu there, gemsbuck there, this, that, whatever this is over here. And you're like, man, I can't see anything. You feel like such an idiot. But, they've been doing this now for a month or two. They've been, every day, a day on, stay on, they've been out there. And they're also accustomed to looking for those things. But this is in typical podcast fashion where we
little rabbit hole, squirrel.
We go off on another tangent. But, that's one of the cool things is, so say I'm in Colorado and I'm hunting in a kind of a open area. Boy, I'd be lucky to see a small group of mule deer and maybe an antelope. Whereas over there, you'd look at a hillside and there's literally kudu, black wildebeest, blue wildebeest, diker, steenbuck, fall rebuck, you name it, buntabok.
Eland might be out there.
Yeah, eland.
So it's just the game is so much more plentiful.
Yeah, there's just piles of stuff. I mean, and that just blows your mind.
Sure.
And you're like, oh my God, if you like to hunt, there's
Yes.
a lot of things to hunt.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so much fun.
There's a lot of stuff to hunt.
But I would say
gear-wise.
Gear-wise. So plains game for me, I layer up there. We could go into a bunch of other details, but very quickly, you don't have to take a lot of clothes as far as what you're going to wear every day. They do your laundry every day in camp, so a couple sets of clothes is all you really need. And most outfitters have a detailed list that tells you what you need to bring, and it's very good.
Okay.
But a really good pair of shoes that you can walk in, boots,
Yep.
hiking shoes normally, gaiters, a couple pairs of comfortable pants to hike in, and then some layer stuff on the top, whether you use a base layer and a shirt over that and a couple of coats or however you want to do it, and a windbreaker. Windbreaker type stuff helps a lot in the morning because usually it's cool in the morning, but then it gets pretty warm in the afternoon. It might be 50 in the morning and it might be 80, 85 during the day. Their temperature swings are just like our falls at higher elevation out west. So beyond that, that's a spotting scope can be useful. I've only taken one of all the times I've been over there. Did it help? Yeah, we used it, but not a lot. 10-power binos for plains game where I've been is a staple.
Okay.
Yeah, I've
trying to think of the little things.
Yeah, pack like you're going on a.
Do you take your own backpack? Like you're. Like
yeah.
I do take a little pack, like a day pack.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pack like your September, October Western hunt. Typically, is what I would recommend.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Even on something up in a warmer climate or place, I would still recommend that because those mornings are cold. I mean, literally, gloves, neck gaiter, beanie, stuff like that. Now, once that sun comes up, about a half an hour, that stuff's all coming off, and you're in short sleeves and stuff like that. Other thing is so the pH, a lot of the Southern African people have grown up wearing shorts their whole life. So when they're hunting, a lot of them like to wear shorts. Part of that is, just because that's what they've always worn their whole life, but also because it is a little quieter. It doesn't make a bunch of noise going through brush and stuff. And I've done several hunts where I've worn shorts, but, our legs are, unless you do that and walk through that stuff all the time, your legs just get cut up. And you look at the pH and his legs aren't all cut up. And he's walking through the same stuff. I don't know. They do it every day and their legs are just tougher than ours. So you will get these little micro cuts all over the place. I never had an infection or anything like that, but I'm at the point now where it's just, I'm wearing pants.
That's what I do. I just wear pants.
Pants, gaiters.
Yeah.
I'm a gaiter fanatic.
But they don't wear like the gaiters you're thinking of.
No.
They're wearing just little gaiters to keep stuff from getting inside of your shoes.
Sure.
Your boots.
And they wear whatever they want, but if I'm hunting pretty much anywhere, I've got gaiters on.
Yeah.
Just
a short pair of hiking gaiters work great.
Yeah.
They're fabulous.
Yeah. But other gear,
sunscreen and chapstick.
Chapstick. Yeah, don't go over there without chapstick. I mean,
that's what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for you guys to say that specifically, but that's just, I travel with that, and I have one in my pocket every day.
Chapstick, some Visine, because your eyes are going to get full of dust and stuff. Maybe it's me, but I always have some dental floss just in case, because you're going to eat stuff like biltong over there, which is their jerky, and that'll get in your teeth.
Okay.
Other stuff, as far as the lodging goes, you're going to be in 3-4-star accommodations, even in the middle of nowhere. And that is something that has always just fascinated me. If you do a fly-in camp somewhere in the remote part of the countryside, so I've been in Mozambique and Zimbabwe, and you fly into a tented camp, so you're off the grid. There's no electricity. But somehow out of this, nothingness, they've created a very comfortable location with green watered grass. They'll have a generator and power throughout, definitely throughout the day as they're doing stuff, and then they'll have it up to a certain point in the evening. Fantastic meals, like a full-on dining room area with a great seating accommodations and all these things that are there. And then you'll have a flushing toilet. You'll have a shower that's in your tented camp area.
Wow.
It's a phenomenal setup usually in that regard. Sometimes they'll have a fly camp. You'll go to a fly camp, and that's something important to talk about in these hunts. You're going to go back to that kind of a location pretty much every day. You sometimes will stay out and have lunch out there while you're hunting. If you're close to the lodge or whatever, sometimes you might come back to the lodge. But typically every night you're going back to a lodge. Now in South Africa and Namibia, a lot of the places you're going to hunt are going to be in old farmhouses, and you're going to be in structures, and you might be on the grid. So you'd have all those accommodations regardless. Keep in mind that they oftentimes have, they call them taps, not faucets, and they'll have one for hot and one for cold, but they're reversed. So just keep that in mind.
You'll learn that pretty quick.
You'll learn that one
That's
pretty quick.
interesting.
And the toilets flush the other way.
Do they really?
Yeah, the old Coriolis effect.
The water thing would throw me for a loop, because ever since forever, you learn that in like your first shop class in 7th grade, that hot's on the left, cold's on the right, payday's on Friday.
Yeah. So no, that's a thing. Trying to think what are some other
electrical adapter plugs. Some people want.
Oh, there we go.
That's a good little thing. You need to just
electrical adapter plugs.
They're cheap.
Yeah, but probably need to have them if you're going to charge any of your stuff.
You do have to have that. Your phones will work, and that's an odd thing. So here we are. We're in, where were we? Well, we're somewhere off in the Zambezi floodplains in Mozambique, and we're cruising around out in the middle of, this is the wilderness, right? And the tracker's in the back of the truck. Ring, ring. His phone goes off. What? How does this work? You're out in the middle of nowhere, but these cats will have phones that will work in the middle of nowhere, and it just blows my mind. Yeah, it's incredible.
All right, guys. So you go all this planning. You finally get there. You're doing all this hunting. One question I've had, and I'll ask the question at the end. But I've heard that in all these lodges and all these camps, that they treat you like kings, and the meals are just next level. I've heard that from several people, that the food is fantastic. And my specific question, you can talk about the accommodations and the food. Do you get to eat the game that you kill?
Oh, yeah.
And even if it's not the game that you specifically killed, are they serving that wild game at the lodge? And what would you compare the African species meat to, taste-wise? What's the food like? So it's not just about the grip and grin photo of the giant kudu. It's like, is there a big steak afterwards?
I got a funny one on that.
Yeah. So how's the food?
So you're eating this meat all the time, and I'm like, man, this is delicious. So I've had amazing whitetail, and I've had not such good whitetail or mule deer or whatever the case is, but you're eating stuff over there, and everything is it has its own flavor, right? It's not all beef tasting, but it's not far off from it. Mm-hmm. So I remember, I'm like, this guy Andrew Pringle from Crusader Safaris. I'll give him a plug. He's a great guy, great outfit. So fantastic group. But anyway, so we're eating this stuff, and I'm like, Andrew, what do you do? Do you age this stuff? I mean, how do you make this taste so fantastic? He's like, oh no, we don't age it. That's a bushbuck that, somebody shot 3 days ago. I'm like, really? So I don't know. The animals just must eat different, have a different diet, but most everything over there is really good to eat.
Yeah.
So I would describe it as, it is game, but it is tender, non-gamey meat. That taste,
no gamey taste.
They season it, they marinate. It is fabulous. They grill it. They do kebabs with it.
Oh, yeah.
It is fabulous. Some of my favorites would be, I love eland. I love an eland steak grilled. They are just delicious. Then I have to say, zebra that I've had has been very, very good.
Yeah,
Warthog,
zebra schnitzel.
It's very good.
It's delicious.
Warthog is good. So yes, springbuck, they take the loins out and stuff them. The food that I've had over there
here's what blows you away, though. So here in the States, you shoot an animal, boy, you rush, you get all the guts out of it, you get all the internal organs out, you try to get it somewhere and cool it down right away.
For sure.
Over there, you'll kill the animal, and it gets gutted, and that's it. So the internal organs stay inside the body, and you might cruise around the rest of that day with that animal in the back of the truck in 70, 80-degree weather.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you eat it, and it's delicious.
Really?
So it just defies your North American logic.
But I would encourage that if you get to go, you will notice that their landscape, and Neil, I think you could echo this. What I've noticed, you go out west and there's sagebrush and there's some grass and junipers or whatever. You go to Africa, there is brush and there is grass, and it is a yellow grass, and I mean, it is thick.
High in protein.
So those animals are eating a different diet than we have here.
Sure.
Their ground just must produce more grass. It's fertile,
nutrient dense.
Yes,
but what he said is, I mean, they don't have much of a gamey flavor. There's not much of an aftertaste or anything like that. It's just really
delicious.
Easy to eat.
Yeah, I was interviewing here somebody not that long ago, and this guy had hunted all over the world, and had great opportunities. But I asked him, what was his favorite game meat, and the top 3 animals were all from Africa. So it must. And
I would say the
same.
I would say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I would too. I'd throw Axis in there too, though. Axis.
Oh yeah.
Indian.
Yep.
Asian, but yeah, it's delicious too. But yeah, buffalo. I've had buffalo. Buffalo's good. So I was in Namibia one time, and so they had snacks, and they were making and it was Kalahari calamari. So I'll try anything one time, right? And so it's Gemsbuck intestine, both the large and the small. Yeah, I don't remember which one was which necessarily, but one was pretty tough. It's hard to get off the top of the roof of your mouth. It was like chewing on fat.
Yeah, that doesn't sound super appetizing.
But yeah, I don't know. I haven't had anything that was really bad. I'm not a big fan of liver personally, but I've had liver, and that was good over there.
So yes, all I would say is you will enjoy the food.
Yeah, Joe, you just got back, and you probably didn't go on that trip to lose any weight.
I don't think I lost any weight, and we walked a lot, and I'm quite certain I didn't lose any weight.
That's a tip, though, I would tell everybody that's going over there, and I tell everybody that I know when they go, is if you're going to leave that truck, if you get off that truck, take yourself some water.
Yep.
So, because that animal right now is 200 yards from the truck, but next thing you know, it's a couple hours later. And,
yeah.
I mean, we did a day also in Namibia, in the southern part of Namibia. No, this was up around kind of where you were. And we shot a kudu. And it's mountainous up there. I mean, that's where mountain zebras are, things like this. Mountains are, they're big, giant hills. They call them mountains, but it's hilly, mountainous type terrain, lots of rocks. And boy, by the time we got done hauling that kudu out of there, it was 6-7 hours later.
Oh wow,
and we didn't take any water or any of that stuff with us, but it was rewarding. I mean, it's rewarding, and that's the other thing about Africa. You can make it as tough or as easy as you want. I mean, they will accommodate you if you're handicapped. They will make that happen for you and get you on animals. Obviously, if you can't walk a tremendous amount, it may affect the trophy quality. You know, you might have to settle for some animals that aren't, quite what somebody who's really ambulatory could, or able to move could get up on. But they'll make it happen. I mean, I have another great PH over there, Len, and he was talking about elephant hunting with a guy who couldn't walk much at all, and so he would go and scout for these elephants. And then they'd maneuver into a position where they could get up on them at that point. Because an elephant hunt is a walking hunt. It's like a 20-mile-a-day deal. It's a lot of walking. So
that sounds intense. So food, outstanding. That's to be expected. I think you hear that a lot. And I don't know, as I travel anywhere for any purpose, that's usually one of the things I'm like after.
But here's the thing to think about, though. So the term safari is a Swahili term from Kenya, right? But the whole thing is just, it's a hangover from when the British used to come down and do trips and things, and there were certain expectations for the aristocracy about how they would be treated in that. So it's morphed, obviously, but that's kind of the tradition that it's based on.
Bit.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like a great experience, and if you do your homework and you do your research and you're prepared and you practice and you're ready to do some walking if need be, that it can just be the pinnacle of your hunting career.
Yeah, no, it can be. And I mean, sorry to cut you off, but there are some things. So and there are some tips that I hope that we can express to everybody. So number one is, and we can keep chatting, but work with a travel agency that specializes in traveling internationally with firearms. That's a big one. So there are several out there. Mm-hmm. Do yourself a favor and do some homework ahead of time. Go to the Dallas Safari Club show. Go to Safari Club International. Get educated on that stuff. The other one is to make sure you're current with all your vaccinations and shots and things like that.
Passport.
Make sure your passport is good. You need at least 4 pages in your passport before you go over there. It can't expire 6 months or something like that from the day you start to travel. What are some other things that you should know? Trophies. So before you leave, speak to a reputable taxidermist.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you kill all these animals. What do you do with them?
Well, I don't mean to insult anybody, but the guy that does your whitetail and your, whatever locally, he may not have the capability of doing your blessed buck or your eland or whatever. Sure. So, there are people that do that quite well, and the hunt of your lifetime is not the time to experiment with taxidermy. So if you're going to bring this stuff back to get mounted, let's, find yourself a taxidermist that has a history of being able to do those animals. I would recommend that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now that guy, gal, whatever, they usually can help you with tags. So with every animal, depending on what you plan to bring back, there's usually 3 tags needed. So you'll need one for the skull, you'll need one for the cape, and then you'll need another one for the backskin if you're keeping the backskin. So up to 3, maybe more. So you need these tags, and what they are is just to keep track of that animal all throughout this process. It'll have your name, probably the taxidermist name on there and stuff like that. And if you have a taxidermist that deals with this international type of stuff, they have it's a
Standardized
cookie-cutter deal.
procedure,
They'll
yeah.
have it. The other thing you could do is work with a taxidermist that can help you actually bring these animals back. So if you have somebody that does a lot of international stuff, I suppose there's a premium for their work that's probably associated with that. So you might pay a little bit more on the taxidermy side than you would for somebody who's your local cat that does that stuff, but you're more likely going to be assured that you're going to get quality work. But they can also, some of these folks can work with the brokers here and deal with everything for you in Africa and all that stuff.
So nice.
So at the outfitter location in Africa, there's somebody there that helps orchestrate this deal, or
so
are you kind of on your own?
Normally, in my experience, your taxidermist here in the United States is going to work with a broker and a forwarder and a shipper over there. That outfitter is going to know that freight shipper, if you will, over there. So the outfitter preps your trophies, gets them to the forwarder. They make sure they got all their documentation and everything, and then that guy handles then the shipping of the trophies to the United States. They come, they clear customs, all that. And your taxidermist can help you with all of that stuff. And that's what Neil is referring to, that if your taxidermy does this and is familiar with that, he can help you. He handles a lot of that stuff for you. And it is so nice because it's just one less thing that you have to worry about.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
where is this at? How's it going?
We have a guy here that I work with, Mike Peebeck at Osage Taxidermy. So he has a great relationship with the broker, and he knows all these people all over the world. He deals with that stuff, and that's the way to do it, is to work with somebody that does that. But the way it works when you're hunting, so have a plan, have an idea of what you want to do, have an idea of the pricing. If you're going to get stuff mounted, because sticker shock, the stuff is not cheap to mount.
Well, we should say that's not included in your hunt.
No, that's not.
That's
the trophy prep is. I guess I'll explain it. So you're hunting, you shoot a kudu, and they'll ask you, what do you want to do with your kudu? And you'll scare the hell out of them when you tell them you want a full body mount. But so if you say, I just want a Euro mount, okay, no problem. Then that's what you're going to get a skull. They're probably going to keep the hide and that. And the other thing about Africa is it's kind of like the European system. So if that animal is living on somebody's land or what have you, the landowner owns the animal. It's their livestock, basically. So they can sell the meat, they can sell the hide, they can sell any of that stuff. So let's say you decide you want to do a shoulder mount. Then they'll always ask you, do you want the back skin? And so you get then and there they cape it out, they'll cut the back skin off, do all that stuff. So that's the one animal you shot, let's say. So that from that point, they're going to take it apart, they're going to salt it, they're going to dry the hide, do all that stuff, and then they prep it to go to a taxidermist there in South Africa, let's say. Now that taxidermist job is they call it dip it and pack it, I think is what happens there. So they're going to make sure that it's been dipped in insecticide, killed off all sorts of stuff. Skulls are completely bleached, and most of the skull boiling happens at the outfitter's location. They prep it in that regard. But the taxidermist now has to kind of make sure and certify that it's been dipped and packed. I think maybe a veterinarian looks it over or stamps it or whatever. I don't know how that necessarily works, but that taxidermist does that. And then from the taxidermist, it goes to a freight forwarder who's a shipping agent in South Africa. And again, it's a small world. There's just a few of these folks that do that work, and they'll deal with people from Namibia. Stuff from Mozambique goes in there, Zimbabwe, whatever, So there's only a few of these people that do that stuff. Then they make arrangements, and then it'll ship to the United States, and then it has to clear customs over here. And I suppose you could go and try to do that yourself, but typically it's good to work with a freight broker that will basically make sure your paperwork's all good, clear it through customs. So the thing I tell people, and I don't know if the math works out anymore, but it's usually $100 per person that touches it, per animal, but never less than $1,000. It's kind of
to do a shoulder mount.
It's just, like in each one of these steps, it's kind of like the rough math I tell people to prepare for it. That's just to get it to your tax.
To get it to here.
Now the other thing is, a good trick is there's great taxidermists in South Africa. So if you want to get something mounted over there, be my guest. That's not what I mean. I'd rather bring it over here and then deal with this. But the thing you can do is take those skins, like a flat skin or something, and just have them tan it or whatever you want to do over there. A lot of times they don't mat them like taxidermists do over here, where they put a bunch of stuff underneath of it. It'll just be literally a flat skin. It'll be leather on the bottom and flat. And they, like on a zebra, they don't sew the head back together. Typically, it's kind of like open mouth looking thing. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do cool things like pillows, stuff like that with the back skins, or hide or whatever you want to do, they do a great job of that. So you can have that taxidermist do that stuff for you.
Yeah, and I would assume Euro mounts could be done like that.
Yeah, they can do those too, and get them all ready for you. And warthogs, I've had warthogs come, and I just want the skulls. That comes back over here, and it's done. You have to have a USDA approved taxidermist? I mean, this is where this comes into play for pigs. So,
okay.
Pigs are a thing, so they got to be done like that. And then once you get into CITES animals, there's more paperwork and other stuff that has to take place too. So CITES being leopard and elephant and some of these things. What else was I going to say? But yeah, they'll do a fantastic job with doing stuff like pillows and things. But the rules I think have changed, but it's something don't quote me on it. But I made some pillows out of a backskin one time, and on the paperwork they didn't specify that they made pillows, and they confiscated them. So you have to be very specific about what it is that's being done. I think now it's changed to where it's, if you say it's a kudu, it's all parts of a kudu, so you're good. But don't quote me on that. That you better check that out. But
awesome.
So it's that's why having somebody that can handle these things for you is a good way to go. So do some research on that. Now again, go to Dallas Fire Club show.
Those guys are going to be there
in January. They're all there. You can go chat with all these folks and get all sorts of information, and put yourself in the best position to have a successful experience and a great trip.
Yep. And so it sounds like a good place to start with that would be to talk to the outfitter that you select about what do you do with your trophies after the kill, because I'm sure they'd have a lot of information and recommendations because they deal with it every day. You deal with it once in your life. But they can just
careful because they can be a little flippant about it. Like to them, it's like giving you directions in my house. Oh, turn left here, turn left here. It's very simple, but you might need a lot more information than that.
Yeah. Well, it all comes back to communication and being upfront and understanding what you're doing. And if you have a good plan before you go, it sounds like your reward for planning before you go, well, it'll be a stress-free trip, even on the way, till you get home and however much time it takes to get your trophies back. So,
and that's the other one. Don't be in a big rush for your trophies. Just kind of, it's kind of like the rule of thumb for if you buy a suppressor. Send in your paperwork and then just forget about it.
Yeah, so same thing with trophies.
It'll start to come back, and then you'll hear about it, and you got to be prepared to send money. Now, that's the other thing about using, let's say, a taxidermist that handles all this for you, because they kind of act like an entire broker. So instead of having to wire money to the taxidermist and then wire money to the freight forwarder and then send a check to the broker, you can just pay this one person who can do that. So there are some major big taxidermy houses in the United States that can do that stuff. And the other thing about
that would be handy to know beforehand. For
the
sure.
other thing about like doing taxidermy in South Africa versus shipping it back, and that's why I don't do it over there, is because now you're going to have a big old huge crate, and you're going to have more weight, and this is going to cost you a lot more money to get it back over here.
Sure.
So that's a thing.
Yeah, that's good thinking. So you've got this successful trip. The food's amazing. The hunting's great. Lodge is fantastic. You've shot some trophies. Let's talk about gratuity. That's, I know, a big part of an expense of your first or 100th safari, whatever it is. How many people are typically getting a tip from you, and how do you base how much you give each person? What all goes into that?
Take this away, Neil, because you helped me with this, and it was been
I
sound.
can't even tell you that it's always an uncomfortable part of the trip. So a guy to chat with some point in time is you can go chat with the Safari Classics people at their booth in Dallas, and the guy named Dave Folson will give you a good idea of how to do it. And I mean, a lot of folks, it's like 10% of the overall cost of the hunt. But when you're on a larger trip, like one of the big tented camps, you're in Zimbabwe or Botswana or, up in the Caprivi or Mozambique or something. This is an expedition. I mean, yeah, it's a semi-permanent location, but it's still an expedition, and it should be thought of and treated that way. And I guess the other thing to put in the back of your mind is like your reputation is there on the tipping too, and you don't want to just go throw money at everybody, because that's not reasonable either, nor is it advised. But in those situations, it's lottie-dottie everybody. So, I mean, you've got cooks, you've got the actual waiters that deal with, food prep and cleaning of the rooms, and obviously the pH, and
Skinners,
trackers, the pilots that fly you in. And so that 10% figure is pretty reasonable.
And that's total spread out over everybody you come in contact with, or are you giving 10% to...
No, gosh, no. Yeah, not 10% to everybody. I mean, you figure that PH has a lot invested in this. He's the guy that does all the arrangements. So the trackers in those scenarios, they're staff. They work for the PH.
Okay.
Yep. And I guess we should qualify those terms. So there's an outfitter who probably owns the company, right? They may be your PH. They may be in camp. They might be your professional hunter. In Zimbabwe, I have a lot of friends in South Africa, so I don't want to upset them. But the PHs in Zimbabwe go through a very difficult, probably the toughest one in the world, professional hunter school. It's very in depth. I mean, they know the taxonomic names of all the plants, all the animals. I mean, you go driving around with these folks, and they're going to tell you that's some Latin name for this plant, and this is Leo whatever for a cat, and so they know this stuff. I mean, they're very intelligent, but then they'll make you a cup of tea. They can skin and quarter your animal. They can drive a truck. They can fix the truck. That guy is working from the very second he gets up till the very moment he goes to bed. So when you go to bed, he's chatting with the fellows. They're making arrangements for tomorrow. They're getting the vehicle gassed up. They're making preparations for lunch. I mean, they're doing a lot of stuff all the time. And so he'll be out there having a glass of wine with you, making sure that you're comfortable, but then he's also doing all this work. And so yeah, he's the most important person on that trip. But then you will tip the trackers independently on those hunts. And the same with the staff. So the exact figure, who knows? I wouldn't tell you what that exact figure is. It's usually, several $100s per tracker.
Okay.
So, and then it, so the PH might be a significant portion of that. You'll also have a camp manager too. So that's another person that's in that mix. So yeah, you just, be prepared to spend some money. I hesitate to tell you the exact figure because that's not fair. Are you there for a 10-day buffalo hunt, or are you on a 21-day safari? But, and there's other people that, gift the PH a Land Cruiser. So, it can vary. Just that 10% number is probably pretty real. Could be 15, could be 20.
Yeah.
And it's, how hard did this person work for you? Was the experience everything you thought it was going to be? Don't hold them accountable for bad weather or things that were beyond their control. Don't go there with expectations that everything you're going to shoot is a Boone and Crockett, and if you didn't shoot that, not a Boone and Crockett. Let's use terms for Africa: Roland Ward, SCI Gold, whatever. Don't have those expectations. Go over there and expect to have a really great time. And I promise you, when you leave, you're going to be trying to figure out how to auction off one of your children or sell some cars or whatever to plan your next trip.
Because that's for sure.
Literally, the first time I went over there, it was a plains game hunt, and it was my bucket list trip. And in fact, I'm very fortunate. I've been able to do my bucket list and then way beyond that in my hunting career. I'm very fortunate. That doesn't ever escape me. But yeah, definitely on the flight home from Namibia after that first one, I was like, okay,
you only need one kidney.
I need to do a buffalo hunt. So how am I going to do this? Because that's what you're going to do. Because it's a magical place. It definitely gets in your blood. It's everything you thought it was going to be and then some. If you like to hunt, it's a tremendous experience.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed from people who have gone, at least my friends that I have, it concentrates the hunting experience. A lot of guys, they hunt mule deer, and they'll go on a 5-day trip once a year, and then they'll hunt elk, and maybe they go on a 5-day trip every other year. But it takes all of that hunting experience and spotting and shooting, and it concentrates 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hunts into
10 days.
10 days.
Yes.
That's pretty remarkable. Joe, would you say that Neil's 10 to 20% of the total cost of your hunt that you distribute for tips to everyone that helps that seem in line with what you've experienced?
Yeah, so I've done it a couple different ways. I can't say there's a right and a wrong. Again, you really have to do what you feel, but 10 to 20% of your total safari cost is good. And I like to this last one I went on, when I got there, we'd been hunting for a few days, and I just looked at Louie and I was like, hey man, how do you do this at the end of the trip? I just want to, what are you comfortable? Do I tip you and then you kind of know the pecking order and, pay the trackers and the skinners? And he's like, that's the way we prefer to do it. Because they know who all the staff is that's working, and there may be people behind the scenes that you don't even know had a part in making your trip, successful or fun or whatever. So that I like now after being there, I just ask them.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just upfront with them and be like, hey man, how would you prefer to handle this? And they will just tell you. Like I say, I can't say enough good things about the professional hunters that I've been with. They are the ones that I've been with are honest, upfront, good, truly professionals.
And a lot of the plains game type hunts in South Africa and Namibia and stuff like that, a lot of times we're doing it as a group, but you give the money to the PH or to the outfitter. And so we have kind of a number that we do, and then it's like 75% is for PHs. I mean, they got vehicles, they got all these other things. And then 25% per day is for the staff that does the cooking and cleaning and all that stuff. And then they hand that out, because in those scenarios, most of those folks are actual employees. So you're and have no fear. It's going to those people. It's just done that way there, and it's done another way in another place. So like in the big tented camps, a lot of those people, like that PH is an independent contractor. So he comes there, and the PH in most of those other places is an independent contractor too. But they would have the trackers and the skinners and all that stuff. They work for the outfitter, and they might work on the farm in the off season too. So they're employees. They live there. Whereas in the tented camps, I mean, we're in, I don't know, picture the deepest, darkest part of Alaska and having a hunting operation there. So these people come from some of the communal lands, and then they work with the PH, and then and these people are amazing. You could take this little group of folks, and they are their own little fire team, because you could take them from Zimbabwe, you could take them and put them in Mozambique, you could take them and put them in Namibia, up in the Okavango, and they could hunt there. They'd have to get accustomed to kind of the area a little bit, but their skill set is universal all over their place. And if you ever do a hunt like that, where you watch people look at the grass in front of them and determine that there was 3 elephants that came through here, and then they find some dung and they can tell you that it was probably about 3 hours ago, it blows your mind. Because, I mean, they look at the ground and can just read this stuff. I mean, we went to a deal one time, we were doing a big tracking thing. Sorry to get off on this topic, but it until you experience it, you won't understand.
It's hard to appreciate.
We went into a place that had these marula palms, where this group of elephants had come in there, and they shake these palm trees and knock the fruit off of there. And so we were tracking one, and it came into this area and then got in mixed up with all these other people. Well, obviously you don't waste your time looking in this area. So now you go looking out here to see where this one elephant now left, and they found it. That type of thing.
Skill.
Yeah, when you see things like that happen, or if somebody makes an errant shot on an animal and then you track it for 3 days, like I said with that one buffalo, that is insane. Yeah, but they're seeing every animal has its own little fingerprint, right? So it's got a chip out maybe of a hoof. It drags its right foot, or it has a chip out of a hoof, or something like that. But they can find that.
That's remarkable.
And then follow it. It's incredible. I tell people when I get back here, once you experience one of those scenarios, you will be so impressed that you'll be like, I love this. This is part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoy the sunrises and the sunsets.
Yeah.
You can look at the sun. Like over here, sunset, you got sunglasses on to look at. Over there, that sun's about ready to drop. You can look at it. Just sit there and look at the sun. It's a big orange ball of fire, and you can look at it. It's not too bright, and it's beautiful. It illuminates the sky, so yeah.
And you have to look up and see the Southern Cross because you can only see it in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yep.
Sounds amazing. It's got my fire stoked for one day, hopefully going to Africa. And I really appreciate you guys kind of guiding our listeners and myself who have never been to maybe some of the more intricate details that you don't normally get when you read about it or watch a YouTube video or see it on TV. So, guys, thanks for sitting down. Really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have you guys back on the show at some point. And, thanks again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hornady Podcast, and we'll catch you on another one.
Thank you, Seth.
Thanks, buddy.